Well, first of all, I'd really like to welcome everybody, and I appreciate you coming. As you all know, tonight is an opportunity for us to provide you, as potential board members, some information and education related to a couple of things that are out in front of us in the community. My name is Billy Sitton, and I'm a partner with Triumph Golf. And with us via Zoom is Alan Black. He is the Director of Operations for Harris County Flood Control. I'd like to start off, before I thank all of you again, let y'all know that this meeting is being recorded. The entire meeting will be available, it'll be on our website. If anybody would like to have it, we can make sure that you can get a link to it, or you can take it straight off of the website. But this meeting is being recorded.
Do you mind if we go to Facebook?
Do what?
Do you mind if we share it to the rest of the community?
No, you
I don't.
You want.
It's going to be live. It's going to be something where everyone in the community can access it off of YouTube. And we will provide the link.
I think the question though is, if it's recorded, which is fine, are we then therefore able to reference it on the Facebook page for people that are not here?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
There'll be a link posted on longwoodgc.com by YouTube, by tomorrow on YouTube, but there'll be a link. You just click on it. Anybody can get it. There's a page on our website. It's called Flood Mitigation. There's some information that's already on the website, but there will be a link on that by tomorrow, right?
Okay. On behalf of all of us, we'd like to convey our thanks to each and every one of the potential candidates for the board. It's really impressive that you want to take this kind of responsibility in the future of the community. Whether elected or not elected, y'all deserve a big round of applause, and we thank you. The next, go ahead, Dave. The next two slides we've had on previous presentations, and the reason that they're on this presentation is because they show very, very clearly and on the history of the major events, the flooding events that have impacted this residential area. This is the door in our starter's hut. And it's clearly marked. Every time that we flood, we go out and mark it, and we write the date and the name of the storm. We have seen over the major events that have been plaguing us for the last 5.5 years, each and every event has become more severe. There have been more homes flooded, there have been more streets flooded, there's been more isolations of the community. Go to the next one. And this is what it led to of a picture of our last event. Right here. The entire area, golf course, 106 homes, streets, entrance and exit of Longwood were underwater. Go ahead, Dave. Before we get into the agenda and talk about what we're going to need to talk about, there's two major points that I want to make sure that's perfectly clear. That the community needs to decide whether they want flood mitigation. We're talking about protecting 1,504 residents. We're talking about reducing flood levels, which I know Alan will talk about, from 7 to 10 feet. That's a huge number. And this is really important. This is probably the most confused thing that we've had to talk about. There is no separation between flood mitigation. There is no connection, I apologize, wrong word, between flood mitigation and amending the deed. There is no connection. If you want flood mitigation, that protects the development. If you want to pursue amending the deed, which we will explain in great detail, that preserves the golf course. But flood mitigation, with the impact it has on this development, and as a priority it is for Harris County Flood Control, that it has a great likelihood of happening. So the only thing that we need to decide, you still have the chance, the opportunity to do what you want to do with the flood mitigation. They're not going to force it down the entire resident's throat. But if a majority of the people in this development want to protect themselves from the ever-increasing threat of floods, they have the opportunity to move forward with the flood mitigation. The golf course is a completely separate issue. The golf course, because of the way that they have taken the land, the golf course requires an amendment to the deed restriction in order to preserve 18 holes. Without the amendment, there won't be a preservation of golf course. It's that simple. Move on to the agenda items. As potential new board members, we wanted to take this opportunity to present some facts to you. And there's been a lot of conjecture, misrepresentation, or misunderstanding of the facts. We've tried to be extremely transparent in presenting the facts, and we will continue to be transparent, as will flood control. Any of y'all have any questions, you can contact flood control directly or contact us directly. We'll provide all the information that we have. There's not a super secret agenda on the table. It's nothing more than, do we want to protect the community, which I have a business in, against future flooding? And do we want to preserve the golf course? It's nothing more complicated than that. There's a lot of issues on each one of those, but the major components are, do we want to have flood mitigation? And do we want to have a golf course? What we're going to do is we're going to start off going very briefly through a history of how this came to be, because I think that that's critical that y'all know how it came to be. Then we're going to have a presentation by Alan Black, Director of Operations for Flood Control, and he's going to talk to you about the project, the scope of works, the impact of the project. And once he completes that, there will be questions and answers for flood control. A lot of y'all have already submitted questions, and those have been passed on. If you have questions live here, we will cover those questions live here. Once Alan finishes, we're going to have a presentation by Triumph as to why the deed restriction is important. And once we finish that, we're going to also talk about how we can securitize this deed restriction, or this amendment. There's an important topic I want to make sure that we understand, because it's probably the most misquoted thing I've seen online. Everyone says we're releasing the deed. Everyone says we're changing. We're not releasing the deed. We are amending the deed. That we're not asking y'all to just unencumber the property. We're not asking this community. What we're asking you to do is amend the deed. And I'll get to very, very specific reasons why. And we will talk about how we can securitize the community against some of your concerns. After we finish that, we'll address the consequences of what happens if we do and if we don't. Then we'll have a question and answer session. We've already received a number of questions for y'all, which we will answer, and upon the completion of those answers, we'll take open questions and any of concerns that are still out there. And then we'll do a wrap up. But as we move forward, I want y'all to feel free to contact us, feel free to contact flood control with your questions, because what we're trying to give you is the facts. We're not trying to spin the facts. We're not trying to sway your opinion. We're trying to give you facts. I think flood mitigation is by definitely the best interest of the community. And I personally, I will get to reasons why, but I also feel like the golf course is valuable as a centerpiece to your community also. With that said, we'll go through the history, and I won't go through the whole thing other than starting in June of 2017, we contacted flood control. There was debris damming the creeks that we're not allowed to work in the creek bottoms. We contacted flood control, and they sent people out to look at it. That led into a conversation about the potential for detention. When we were, and quite frankly, when we were touring the creek, the other detention that they have is visible. And it led into a conversation about building detention. And it started off, that conversation started off only affecting 1-9 holes. So as we tried to work through that, and it was a long, painstaking by both sides, flood control and ours. Both of us spent a lot of money and time trying to get to a point that they came back and said in order to maximize the benefits to the project, they had to have an additional 20 acres of the creek channel. Unfortunately, that 20 acres goes right through the middle of the remaining golf course. Not the 9 holes that we were talking about detention, but the other 9 holes, and it impacted 5 holes. That's just 5 holes. It also impacted the irrigation system, the drainage system, the underground drainage system, the cart paths, the routing, all of that. It's a huge endeavor to what it did, those 5 holes did to the remaining 18 holes. Soon as that came around that they needed additional 20 acres, we started looking at how we could restore 18 holes on the remaining 169 acres. Turns out that I call them damages, flood control calls it cure. But the money that they can pay to restore something that they disrupt cannot exceed the value of the remaining asset. So, and I got exhibits to explain that quite clearly here in a few moments. What happens is we got estimates. We had third-party expert construction groups come in. I've had architects come in, and they have done quite extensive estimates. And the value of the remaining land under the current deed restriction does not support the value of the remaining land. It is not as much as the cost of the repairs. Because quite frankly, under the deed restriction, everything here is classified as green space. So you get a deduction for floodplain, you get a deduction for floodway, and when you come to an ultimate number, you write 75% off of it to come to a valuation. So with the deed restriction as it is, we couldn't do it. The only way we could possibly do it was to change the deed restriction and maintain a golf course. That's when we went to the board. We went to the board and we talked to the board. We've moved on. That was in April. It was early April last year that we started our conversations with the board. So that is the history of how we got here. And what we'll do now is we'll talk about the flood mitigation project. Y'all can ask your questions about it. And once we complete the discussion of the flood mitigation project, we'll move into phase 2 of the meeting, which is the possibility of amending the deed restriction. With that said, I'd like to introduce Alan Black, Director of Operations for Harris County Flood Control.
Thanks, Billy. Can y'all hear me all right? Can you get a thumbs up? Can you hear me? Am I talking?
We can hear you, but we're turning it up right now, Alan.
Awesome. I'll give you just a second. I'll keep talking and ramble on a little bit, fill some airtime, and you got the volume where you need to be?
It's as good as it gets.
Okay.
Right. Here you go.
I'll talk a little bit louder too, and my family will love it. So thank you very much, Billy, for the invitation to speak here tonight. For starters, I'm going to assume that at least one of y'all there tonight was not at the December 1st call. But for those that were, this will all sound pretty familiar, including my neighborly wave from over here in Coles Crossing, where I've lived for almost 15 years now. I do want to start with a public service announcement.
Hold on just a second, Alan. Yes, sir.
If that's Zoom, can you click on the box to kind of expand it so we can see his face a little bit?
Yeah, can you put his face on it? Okay, go ahead, Alan. I apologize.
Sure. So I do need to start with a little bit of a public service announcement. I do this whenever I've got people's attention, is that 2 of those 5 floods that Billy pointed out that flooded the starter shack, they were not during hurricane season, which is June to November. Turns out flooding season is all year round here in Harris County. So please, I strongly encourage, if you don't already, to please buy flood insurance, because wherever you live in Harris County, you are at risk for some form of flooding. 68% of those flooded by Harvey lived outside a mapped floodplain. And equally important, because people often ask us this, is will this project, name any project we're working on across the whole county. Will this project guarantee that I will never flood? And the answer to that question is quite simply no. We can significantly reduce the possibility or the risk of flooding, but you will always be at some amount of risk of flooding in Harris County. So I'll go back real briefly to the comments that Billy was talking about in terms of protect. And while some people would say, yes, we're going to protect you from flooding, the risk is always still there, but we're going to do our best to reduce that risk as much as reasonably possible. So with that, could you move to the next slide, please? So the first slide, I'd like to talk a little bit about the Little Cypress Creek Frontier Program, because it kind of helps to understand how we got to where we're at today and what we're in part what we're proposing to do. So the proposed project is part of a bigger master plan. We call it the Little Cypress Creek Frontier Program. And it started back in 2010 as a collaborative effort between flood control, Harris County, the Greater Houston Builders Association, and the American Council of Engineering Companies. It was an organized way to plan for regional drainage infrastructure. We undertook this effort because our experience and lots of hydraulic modeling has taught us that a few larger regional stormwater detention basins functions more efficiently than many smaller individual developer basins. So the idea was for flood control to develop a master plan for the 52 square mile watershed that has and will continue to see rapid development. We wanted to get ahead of that development because right now, the way the existing system is today, it's not prepared for the kind of growth that is expected. So we use what are called impact fees, which were adopted by Commissioners Court back in the 80s to get that infrastructure in place. And the fee that's paid by developers is $4,000 per acre of new development. And we use that to acquire right-of-way, to relocate utilities, and really set the stage for then the developers to still do their own work, meaning we aren't doing it for them, but they have to do it in flood control right-of-way to get that better efficiency. And the excavation that we require of developers not only mitigates their own improvements, their own development, but also contributes to reducing existing flood risk for others in the watershed. Now, the original 2018 master drainage plan was focused upstream of Cypress Rose Hill because that's where the development is going to occur, meaning that's where we could require them to excavate in our right-of-way, but at the same time still generate moderate reductions downstream. However, with the passage of the bond election, we're now able to supplement that original plan with additional flood damage reduction projects downstream of Cypress Rose Hill that are strictly focused on flood damage reduction, meaning the developers aren't involved with this. So we're currently updating the overall master plan to reflect this, as well as increased rainfall statistics, and expect to have that ready next spring. I won't go into a technical discussion about that increase in rainfall statistics, but if you're interested, I can probably talk more than you really want to hear about it, but I'll be happy to go into it a little bit if that would be helpful. Now, these efforts were included across multiple bond project IDs that can all be tracked at our website, hcfcd.org/little-cypress-creek. And on the left of that page, you'll see a bunch of different project IDs. Click on them to learn more about what we are up to, because we have a lot of work in the entire Little Cypress Creek watershed. Could you go to the next slide, please? So before talking specifically about the project we're proposing, I want to make sure that you guys understand some. Go back one more. Go back one slide, please. There we go. Yes, I want to talk a little bit about hydrologic and hydraulic, what we call H&H constraints. These are some technical scientific facts about the way the watershed works that helps guide what we're recommending and what will and frankly won't be as effective in the area. So specifically to the Longwood area, those constraints are the conveyance capacity of the channel. Really, that's what we're going to get down to, but let me expand on that a little bit. So The work I described upstream of Cypress Rose Hill will result in some benefits through Longwood Village. Like I said, ultimately, and as I mentioned, that excavation is largely by developers as they develop, and the area will likely take 10 more years, who knows, to fully develop. It might be 10, it might be 20, it all depends on the economy. And at the end of the day, we expect to see a 7-inch reduction in the water surface elevations for a 100-year storm after all that work is done. So without any project in the area, we're still going to get that benefit, but it'll take 10 plus years to accomplish it. But along those same lines, constructing only detention basins, either upstream or downstream, immediately upstream or downstream of Longwood Village, will have some benefits, but really only marginal additional benefits through the neighborhood. And those benefits would be measured in inches rather than feet. And we've been talking with a couple of the residents in Longwood and agreed to, because right now our engineering judgment and knowledge of the models tells us that will be the results. But we're going to go ahead and run the numbers and report those back to kind of put the proof in the pudding on that simple fact. So, and the reason the benefits of just detention upstream or downstream are relatively marginal is that the channel itself, the existing channel, has between what we call a 5 or 10-year level of service. What we mean by level of service is the type of storm that that channel can handle before water starts to get out of the banks. And you're familiar with the term a 100-year storm. Well, imagine something smaller than that, on the order of something that happens on average every 5 to 10 years. So that's a statistical storm that may happen more than once every 5 or 10 years. But the fact is, that's how we define the rainfall that we model at a 5 or 10-year event. So the storm that happens more frequently, obviously, it's not as much rain, but it helps you understand that that channel through that area is restricted. So one other clarification is that when I say that the channel goes out of banks at a 5 to 10-year event, that doesn't necessarily mean that people are flooding, but it does mean that the water has exceeded the capacity of the channel and has now gone out of its normal banks. And the reason that's important is that if water cannot be efficiently conveyed through an area, it spreads out, and as a result, increases the risk of flooding, like y'all have seen with Tax Day and Harvey. So logically, one would say, great, hey, let's go improve the capacity of the channel. And therein lies the last condition. Yes, we can improve the channel, and that's what we're proposing to do, but we cannot do just that and nothing else, because it would otherwise transfer the risk of flooding downstream to others. Harris County and the Harris County Flood Control District have rules prohibiting what we call an adverse impact, meaning we can't build a project that will help one group of people only to push the water downstream and put more water on somebody else. So in order to allow us to still build those channel improvements that are needed and will result in good benefits to a community, we also need to excavate a stormwater detention basin to capture that increased flow, hold it for a period of time, and slowly release it back into the channel. And another way to summarize it is kind of like this. We can build only detention, we can improve a channel and build detention, but rarely, if ever, can we do just channel improvements, because it would otherwise, in all likelihood, push the risk downstream, and we just don't want to do that. So next slide, please. I appreciate y'all bearing with me on this, but I hope it's helpful to understand some of the science and the engineering background that goes into not just this project, but all the sorts of projects that we do around the county. So speaking of the proposed project, we are proposing a combination of channel improvements to Little Cypress Creek, making it in some areas as much as 600 feet wide, as well as 1 to 2 feet deeper. We would also construct additional stormwater detention, and that would be on the order of about 1,700 acre feet of detention. And that is what's required to mitigate the impacts of the channel improvements. So I hope you appreciate the scale that we're talking about, because that will more than double the existing volume of the basin that many of y'all, I'm sure, walk around and enjoy the natural beauty of today. So these efforts, they do require additional right-of-way. We just can't accomplish it within the limited land that we currently have. The additional land will allow us to construct the project and also have sufficient room to maintain it into the future. Now, should the community support this, we are prepared to work with the Longwood Golf Club and the community transparently through the entire project life cycle, which will take several years. So I'm going to talk about that timeline here so you understand the timeline that we're talking about. Our preliminary engineering effort on a project like this would normally take about a year. And that would include at least one community engagement meeting, probably two, to seek public input and feedback to help inform what the project looks like. After preliminary engineering, we send that report to court, the commissioner's court, and they say, great, let's go forward and do final design. So we move into final design phase, and that will also likely include one or multiple community engagement meetings. And that process is estimated to take another 1 to 2 years. Sounds like a long time, and believe me, if I could speed it up, I would. But the primary driving factor on that kind of a timeline is going to be the environmental permit that we'll have to get from the Corps of Engineers for impacts to Little Cypress Creek. We have to seek what's called an individual permit through Section 404 of the Clean Water Act. We can't control that timeline, and it's going to be a significant effort to get to that individual permit. But we have been successful in nearly every one of our IPs that we've sought over the years. We have good partners at the Corps of Engineers, and in fact, we fund 2 of the positions for the regulatory group that move our project applications up to the front of the line. Finally, construction is likely to be a multi-year effort as well. And we're talking on the order of 2 to 3 years, provided we have full funding, which is hard to say right now because we don't have a detailed cost estimate. That really comes out through the preliminary engineering report. We have a lot of money in the bond, but would also likely pursue grant funding to supplement that effort. Now, next slide, please. So this slide speaks specifically to a concern that was raised by multiple residents questioning whether or not the proposed project will actually help flooding in the area. So I'll speak to 2 components, and the first is mobility. And I pulled the plans from the reconstruction of Kluge that happened a few years ago and found that during Harvey, the low spot on the road was covered by just around 7 feet of water. Well, the proposed project improvements that we're proposing will reduce the 100-year water surface elevation by almost 11 feet at Kluge. Now, this project would significantly reduce inundations of Kluge, and you and I both know that that happens far too often. The benefits of this are numerous, starting with better access for first responders during a crisis, and extended to allowing you and your neighbors to get out, get back to work, or wherever you need to go after a flood. Now, the next benefit hits closer to home, literally, and I'm sorry this slide dropped off of the slide deck. I apologize for that. But for that same 100-year Atlas 14 event, the proposed project would remove the risk of flooding from 300 homes in the Longwood area. And if you zoom out to a larger area, that number grows to more than 3,100 homes benefiting in some form or fashion. Maybe not outright floodplain removal, but at least some reduction in the inundation of those floods. And the next slide, please. So before I open it up to Q&A, I want to hit on some other subjects that we do hear a lot to try and get ahead of those questions. First and foremost is, what will it look like? Specifically, what about recreation? So you've probably heard me or somebody else from flood control say this before, but flood control does not build, you can go back to the Q&A, that's fine. Flood control does not build recreation elements such as trails, and we cannot per our enabling legislation. But we recognize that the green space opportunities our facilities present are enormous, they're tremendous. And so we work with sponsors all over the county. We enter into a recreation agreement where a sponsor is responsible for building and maintaining recreation on our property while we continue to maintain the basin and the channels. And those sponsors take all kinds of forms, from county precincts to MUDs to HOAs you name it, we've probably got one as a sponsor somewhere around the county. And in the case of a new project like this, ideally, a sponsor steps forward early during the planning stages so we can make sure that everything is coordinated from day one. Because otherwise, we're just guessing and in some regards still going from what the community is telling us they're looking for. And we can leave what I like to say is a little bit of a canvas for somebody else to come along and paint some recreation. But it really works better if we have a sponsor working with us from day one. Absent a sponsor, and you need to be aware of this possibility, our projects, we still vegetate them with turf grass. We mow all of our facilities 3 times a year, no more and no less. That helps us to keep the slopes stable and reduce erosion. And over the next few years following construction of a project, we also come in and plant additional trees where appropriate. In fact, we plant on average around 15,000 trees each year across the county. And in fact, that number is our pre-bond number. It's only increasing because as most of our capital investments are shifted towards bond funding, that's allowed us to catch up on some of our infrastructure, our maintenance funding, as well as our tree plantings with our existing funding that comes in through your property taxes. Now, I know I covered a lot of information just now. I hope it was helpful as you consider the questions that you're being asked. But at the same time, I'm sure you have questions for me. Again, I've talked a lot. I apologize for that. So let's hear those questions. I'll either do my best to answer them, or if I can't, I promise I'll get back to you later with a response.
Questions?
So I saw it on the slide, and I know the owners have been asking I know you mentioned about the impact of Kluge and how it reduces flooding by approximately 11 feet. Speak specifically to the Longwood area, because I know our homeowners don't want to know that.
Can you understand? Did you hear him, Alan?
I believe the question is asking about the water surface reductions in the neighborhood as opposed to at Kluge.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I picked the Kluge because it's the big number. It's the impressive number as to one a lot of people kind of understand because they know how that gets underwater. Within the neighborhood, those water surface elevation reductions are, if you can go back 1 or 2 slides, I think it's on there. 6.7 feet at Longwood Trace is the anticipated reduction. So you can imagine, we've got bigger reductions downstream as all of those improvements are really kicking in. But further upstream, we got the channel improvements that are going to draw that water through, funnel them into the detention basin, and slowly release it back to the channel.
Next, yes, sir.
I just wanted to verify that he said that it reduced the risk of 300 homes in Longwood. It's a larger number in the Kluge immediate area. I didn't think
3,100 homes. Alan, he asked you to restate the 300 homes in Longwood and expanded impact.
So, and I want to preface this by saying these are based on all of the latest and greatest models and rainfall data. And that is for what's called an Atlas 14 100-year event. And that would be 16 to 18 inches of rainfall over a 24-hour period. The homes that would that currently are, but would no longer be in the 100-year floodplain are about 300. Now, if you zoom out, because this project, because of its scale, is going to have bigger benefits as well. If you zoom out, there's on the order of about 3,100 homes in total will receive some benefit. Maybe not completely removing the 100-year floodplain from their home, but instead of a 8-inch inundation at a 100-year event, then maybe it's a 2-inch inundation at a 100-year event. What that means is that they might still flood at 100-year event, but at a 90-year event, maybe they don't. And so, there's different scales of benefits. Some is a complete reduction of the floodplain, and some is a reduction in the damages and in the frequency that a home could expect to flood.
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
Are there other places upstream of Longwood for detention ponds?
So I'm going to get back to the comment I made early on about effectiveness. There are properties upstream. If you, and I've looked at the aerials just like everybody else has. So you can look at the aerials. You can see there are undeveloped properties upstream of spring cypress. And there's two catches that go along with that. First and foremost is the effectiveness. So yes, they would result in some benefit, but the benefits of a large basin just upstream without channel improvements would not be effective. It would reduce water surface elevations measured in inches as opposed to the sort of feet that we're talking about. And so we have to look at, you know, the large cost of excavating that much volume for just a small amount of benefit versus an equal amount of cost to do channel improvements and basin excavation within the neighborhood that produces feet of water surface elevation reduction. Now, the other complication is that upstream of spring cypress, there are a number of different properties that have different restrictions, such as conservation easements, which strictly prohibit the property being used for anything else than what it is today, and that would be preservation. These are stricter than deed restriction, and as I understand it, impossible to lift. But having said all of that, after having the conversations with some of the residents and understanding the desire for information and data, I do have my consultants right now playing a hypothetical to say, forget about those constraints on the land. Let's just go ahead and put a hypothetical basin in this area with approximately how much we think we could realistically get based on the configuration of the land and the configuration of the channel, and tell me what the number is. Now, again, my engineering judgment and my consultants' expertise in the particular models of Little Cypress have said the benefits are really going to be marginal. But I'm going to get a number for you guys just so I can kind of put the proof in the pudding and say, look, we looked at it and it really just would not be as effective of a project given the scale of the cost that you would be investing in there.
Questions? Any more questions for Alan? Yes, sir.
I know you said something about once the basin is developed, then you got to partner with a sponsor as far as coming up with the recreation piece of it or whatever. So that's to say that you guys are still being in partnership with the community to make sure that something is there and it's not just, because I think I've heard a mud hole and all of this different.
Eyesore, mud, oh, yeah, we've heard all that.
Negative. So that's actually scaring residents because they think that, oh, we're just gonna dig a big hole for water to sit in, and then once the water comes, you know, they're gonna be looking at mud or whatever, and you have critters and all kinds of stuff like that. So.
Alan, can I take a shot at this one and you answer it after I get done?
I'd like to give a shot first if I could, because there are a couple of things I'd like to describe. So when we design a stormwater detention basin, one of the first things we have to decide is, will it be a dry bottom basin or a wet bottom basin? Dry bottom basin is pretty straightforward. We make sure that the bottom is sloped enough to where water will eventually will all drain to the basin or to the channel and drain dry when it's not raining. And in that case, you know, we have grass across the whole bottom and on the slopes. We get out there, we mow it again 3 times a year, no more, no less. But the alternative is if we do a wet bottom basin. Now, there's a mixed bag on wet bottom basins because on the good side, we get more volume out of it. You can imagine a dry bottom basin has a slope on it, whereas a wet bottom basin is flat with the water. So I can get more detention volume out of that. However, there's additional depth that has to be excavated. And so when we do a wet bottom basin, we dig it 6 feet deeper and it will hold 6 feet of water. And there's that 6 feet is a real, there's a magic number of 6 feet. It was developed by the Corps of Engineers a while ago, and it strikes a balance because any shallower than 6 feet, then you start to get invasive wetlands plants that get enough sun going out through the water that they'll start growing up. and that gets more conducive to mosquitoes. But deeper than 6 feet, you start to get into concerns about seasonal overturn of water that, all the natural lakes up in the north of us do. When the water temperatures turn, well, so does the water, and you get all the smells and everything that come along with it. So 6 feet is what we do when we're doing a wet bottom, and that allows us to still mow the slopes, but we also are confident that there won't be invasive water aquatic species that start growing up along the edges and down into the water itself. So it's a good balance, and that's what allows it to keep from becoming a mud pit or an infestation of mosquitoes. And again, when we mow it 3 times a year, many people start to say, well, I wish it would be mowed more than that. And so that's where we have the opportunity, and many communities take us up on this, to where we say, all right, hey, Longwood Village, we just got finished building this basin. We're going to mow it 3 times a year. If you would like it mowed more than 3 times a year, then we, flood control, can give you the money that we would normally pay for the 3 times a year mowing, and then y'all can mow it as much as you want. And that's a mowing agreement that we enter into either with HOAs, with MUDs, all kinds of communities decide, hey, we'd like it to be a little bit more manicured. And so they'll come in and mow it 12 times a year or even more than that. As long as they get the 3 times a year that we're paying for, and we're providing a check to the community to do that, then they can mow it as often as they like.
So
I hope that helped. Billy, I'm not sure if that covered what you were going to ask.
That's all right. Yes, ma'am.
So what specifically does the HOA need to do for flood control to continue developing the farm?
Did you catch that, Alan?
No, could you repeat that, please?
What specifically does the HOA need to do for flood control to continue to develop the project?
So, and that's where what you guys are going to talk about after I drop off, regarding what Triumph is proposing, because at the end of the day, the project that flood control is proposing would require an acquisition of property from the Longwood Golf Club. And the Longwood Golf Club has determined what they need in order to be able to sell that property. And so, what we're ready to do is, if y'all working with the golf club agree that here's the way upon which the golf club can sell us the property, then we're ready to go, and we can move on into to PER, engaging with the community, and ultimately building the project.
Wow, hands went up everywhere. That'll teach you. Mr. Olson?
So, do you already have plans for the acquisition of the property? Is that already in the timeline for Harris County at this point?
No, that is not in our timeline. Again, and it kind of goes back to what Billy laid out, is that this has been an ongoing discussion well before the bond. Pre-bond, we didn't have the opportunity to go out and acquire lots of property that we knew we needed to get for good projects. And so we were trying to figure out a way to thread a needle with our constraints and with Longwood Golf Club's constraints. With the bond program, allowed us to incorporate some of the funding for these additional projects, but it's still in a conceptual phase at this point. At the end of the day, if the golf club and the HOA are unable to reach a point where the golf club is willing and able to sell us the property for this project, then we're still going to build projects within the watershed, but it would not be viable for us to build a project in this exact configuration in this area through the Longwood Village community. Because the community will have told us, hey, we can't work it out with the golf club, and so we'll take that as a sign that the project is not supported because we can't make that work.
Go ahead.
I have a variation of this question. I think you just addressed it, but let me clarify. Okay. What I'm looking for is a commitment level from the county to do the project, whether we do anything with the deed restrictions or not. Because there's some.
That would, I will tell you.
If you give them a hard enough time, they'll just go away and everything will stay the way it is.
Okay, I would like to respond to that, Alan. Would you like to take first shot? They want to know the commitment level, and well, there's part two. If we're given a hard enough time, will we just go away?
If we're given a hard enough time, will we go away? Was that the?
If there's enough.
Are you asking? Are you asking if there's a deadline for a decision where otherwise we would say we're going somewhere else? Is that what you're asking?
Let me reword it, okay? There is a limited number of funds available in that $2 billion that have been allocated for these projects. Okay, they're proposing to use some of those funds in our area.
That's correct.
I'll be honest with you, I would like to see it done. But if there is a path of less resistance by going to some other community that doesn't fight it as much, are they going to move away from it and leave us with nothing?
Do you hear that, Alan?
So I did. Okay, so we build projects and prioritize projects based on benefits and based on the ability to utilize our funds to generate those benefits, to reduce water surface elevations all across the county. And so we wouldn't change our approach based on resistance or lack thereof by a community, but rather if we've got a good project that is cost effective and is viable, then we want to build it and we will continue to proceed to build it. But that word viable has a lot of different connotations. One of which is, can I get to the point where I've got the right of way to build a project? If I can't get to that point in a way that makes the project still cost effective, then I'm not going to be able to do that project.
And I'll add to that they've committed, and you can correct me if I misstate this, Alan, they've committed me this is a priority project for them. What could happen is if we cannot come to terms on the land or the cure, not the land. I say the land because the land does nothing more than it impacts the cure cost to rebuild the 18 homes. If we can't get agreement on that, like it is today under green space, the numbers do not work for my company. So I'm going to be very resistant on allowing them to do it. If I can come to agreement with them, it is by far the best interest of the community and the best interest of my company. And that's what we're wishing for.
And all I'm trying to get to, I don't mean to, all I'm trying to get to is I don't want to see a situation where there is so much resistance consistently put out there that the county finally goes up there and says, man, I'm tired of being in this mess. Let's just go use the money someplace else.
Well, I share your concern, to be quite honest. I've been worried about that for a while. I've asked that question point blank. Right now, they still think that we are making progress as a group, and they are still willing to give us some time as long as we continue to make progress.
Okay.
Yet, it's got to be a switch.
It's fine, go ahead, and I'll answer.
Go ahead.
No, it's just because I'm just following all the comments and everything. So my question to Alan is, how do I word this? Is it a problem for you, for your company, if we amend the deed restrictions to allow the golf course to get a higher price for the land? Is that an issue for you guys, or is that okay? Or is that a conflict of interest? I guess if
We've never had a formal offer from them. That'd be like saying if someone came and looked at your house for sale and didn't want to buy it because you had Formica in your kitchen and you changed it out the tile and then sold it to them for the purchase price, did you do something wrong? There's never been an offer. There's never been an agreement. We have been working in a partnership trying to figure out how we can make this work for the community, for Triumph, and for flood control. I could not commend flood control more on their patience that they have demonstrated and how hard that they have worked with us in trying not to create a political nightmare.
I'm just trying to get this on recording because I've seen so much stuff flying out.
I looked that up today too, because I saw some of the posts, and if I'm, and I'll correct me if I'm wrong, but it's a triad of county entities. There's the real estate division, the Harris County Commissioner's Office, and there's a flood control. And those three entities work together to put the deal together. The county commissioners have to approve this deal. The real estate office has to do that. So it's three county entities that are looking at this. So there's no fraudulent, things going on. Am I right?
So I heard most of what you said. I'm going to restate what I think you heard in a way that I would say it that I hope makes sense. So Harris County Flood Control District is a single special purpose district with one mission, and our board of directors is Harris County Commissioners. Now, the bigger umbrella of Harris County also includes Harris County Engineering, and within the Harris County Engineering Department is the Real Property Division, and they are the experts. They are our friends and our best buddies because they do all of our acquisitions for us. And so whenever we have discussions about potentially acquiring right-of-way, we immediately engage with our friends at, we call them RPD, Real Property Division. And then oftentimes when there are questions about legality of certain things, if we just don't know how to interpret something, if there are property interests that don't make sense to us, or there are deed restrictions, for example, we will then also engage with the county attorney's office. And so the county attorney's office is under the umbrella of the county attorney who was recently voted in and sworn in earlier this year. But they provide the legal guidance that we all need to navigate through this and all kinds of other projects that we're working on around the county. Did that restate it in a way that made sense?
Makes sense.
Okay.
One more question.
All right. No, we want you to get as many facts as humanly
I
possible.
just have a bunch of people sitting in a lot of questions.
Yes, sir.
One of the other ones that I saw, I think yesterday or today was, so there were 3 offers already made that
No.
were denied.
I can tell you for a fact that is not true.
Okay, so we can put that in recording on.
Yeah.
That is not.
There has
true.
never,
Not many offers.
ever been a letter of offer to us.
Okay. And I'll shut that.
Well, please, you gotta have, your arms gotta be asleep.
My name is Michael Majeski, so I want to stand up and make sure everybody hears me, especially on the recording. So I'll give you a break. I'm going to ask questions that not everybody is talking about. So the first thing is I want to ask questions about a dry basin and a wet basin. It may sound like asking how paint dries, how it doesn't dry, if it's latex versus oil. But I think it's important to be able to think, okay, if you make a retention basin in the golf course and you make a dry basin, what is the practical use of doing anything with that land? Like, for example, putting soccer fields, putting gardens, putting any kind of recreation that you would make it attractive and easy for going to precinct 3, precinct 4, maybe cooperating with you on putting something practical there, including, extending out the concrete, I can't remember what it, the larger sidewalk where the golf carts could go through the area and people could walk. But I just, in my mind, my parents live in Glenlock, and they have a lake near the golf course. There was probably a lake there anyways. I was just thinking when I was hearing Alan talk about if the water goes deeper, you have mosquito problems and different other issues. I'm just thinking, instead of it just being just a flat piece of land, that we have to figure out how we would want to use it, or versus maybe making some of it a lake and there's less of a detention pond or a detention area, and that would make it a balance of making a practical space for something else for the community instead of just, somewhere that water is going to go.
Okay.
I'm a proponent of wanting to do this, but I want to understand what is a practical choice between those two things in being able to just not make it just about taking in water.
I understand that. Alan, I am going to go first this time.
Okay.
That I can't tell you about the practical, he's gonna do that as soon as I get done, but what I can tell you is we want to work with all three groups in a cooperative manner. He earlier said the first stages of this would be the host meetings to get the community's input on it. That would be part of that meeting. We are not doing, Triumph Golf, Longwood Golf Club is not doing this in a vacuum. We want a partnership with the HOA, and together we can go and negotiate what is best. Once we decide what is best, we have more power together. Sorry, Alan, we have more power together than we do all three of us bickering amongst ourselves. So what I want to tell you is that I want us to walk arm in arm into these meetings that they're wanting to have to shape these in order for us to come out of it with what is best for the community. Now, Alan, you can tell them about the practical aspects.
Sure. So we don't build basins the way we used to. And what I mean by that is the way we used to is that if I had a 100-acre square property, then I would have gone in and dug as much as I could, left 25 feet on the edges to the right of way, and it'd be a big square dry hole. We don't build basins like that anymore. That's driven by a number of different things, but it's all at the tagline, the end of our mission, with appropriate regard for community and natural values. So I'm going to talk about both of those briefly. The community is pretty obvious. The community wants to be able to use this as green space. Some communities want a dry bottom basin so they can put a soccer field in the bottom of it. Others prefer to have a wet bottom basin so they can go fishing, or so they can enjoy the beauty of the birds coming in and feeding on the fish that are in the pond. On top of that, we also bring in, during the preliminary and final design stages, we bring in landscape architects who are a whole lot better at drawing curves than me, the engineer, and help to make things look more natural. Something that is pleasing to the eye and that the people can enjoy. And that all comes with or without a recreational sponsor. We're going to do that and make it a basin that you and the flood control district can be proud of regardless. But you talk about the environmental side as well. Many of our basins, we end up making them wet bottom, not just because the community is interested in it, but because we can also incorporate stormwater quality treatment into that basin. The water comes into the basin. There may be some sedimentation ponds that allow that they're deeper water. The water comes in, it slows down, it drops its sediment load, it then filters through various treatment trains of plants that will clean the water and make it better coming out the other end than it was when it came in. And so we like to pack as many of those benefits as we possibly can. And every single project is different. Every single project is a child, and every single one is different based on what the community is interested in, based on what the property looks like, based on the surroundings of the community. We've had projects that are just about to go out to advertise, actually, where the community was loud and clear. We really, really value the trees in the area. And I can't get around it. I'm going to have to cut down some trees in order to dig a detention basin. But we have gone into, and this is the Inwood Forest Country Club detention basin, Inwood Forest detention basin. We went in over the course of a year and surveyed every single tree with a diameter greater than 4 inches, tagged them all, assessed their quality, assessed their health, grouped certain areas where we say, hey, look, we really want to try and save this grouping of trees. Some cases it's not possible because it means we would have to sacrifice too much volume. But there are times, and I need to take my video off because I think my audio is scratching up. So let me do that real quick here. So I'm still here, but I think this will allow you to hear me better. And so we tagged every single tree and we saved as many of them as we can. Plus, we do have plans to go back in and have a robust tree planting plan afterwards. Sometimes that's driven by community. Sometimes that's driven by permits with the Corps of Engineers. And so again, every one of these is different, and we want y'all with us hand in hand throughout the process, so we know that what we're building is something that you will not only support, but be proud of.
All right.
And that is open to us as a community. Someone can post that there's no trespassing signs, not allowed to be back there. I'm hearing that this will be available to our community for our green space.
No, it will be.
Yeah.
Alan, they want to know if it's private property once they build it, whether the community can use it.
It's public property.
There's actually no restriction we can put on for other cities. That's the bigger. Not all the property, Harris County.
It's Harris County property, so therefore it is public property.
Correct. There's no restriction.
Well, it's public property right now. It's not y'all. We control the restrictions on it right now. You can have golfers out there at 5 o'clock drunk at night. As I understood it, is it possible, Alan, is it possible to restrict the property in any fashion for Longwood residents only?
I do not officially know the answer to that. I suspect no.
Because we have had that discussion before. Next question. You haven't asked one yet.
It's actually a two-part question. So right now, the land that they are asking you, you know where you were, what is the current appraisal for that land?
I'll get, right now, as it sits,
I think it's 950.
$956,000.
And,
Not counting the creek channel, just the 62 acres.
just that
Yes,
section?
ma'am.
Right. So, is Harris County Flood Control able to offer the amount owed by you with a modification of the deed that only unrestricts the land in question?
It doesn't work. That you only unrestrict the land in question. The remaining land is still valued under the deed restriction and it doesn't collateralize the cure.
So what happens if we don't, what happens if we don't release it? What happens if as a board, they say no? We're
Then-
not gonna release it. So do they take it from you?
They can, or we can sell it to them and shut the whole thing down. Because right now, which I was going to get to, the golf course is not viable. We cannot continue, which I've got a slide and I'll show you the exact numbers coming up. We cannot continue to put the money into this thing, $4.5 million since 2016 in damages and improvements. And we cannot continue to do it and keep, every time it floods, it costs us $1 million.
So just to clarify, I'll make sure I heard you correctly. So if our board doesn't take a risk, which could ultimately come back to the board as a huge financial risk, and the actual board members who are on that board, and you're saying that either they can take the land, or you're just gonna shut the whole golf course down.
Well, let me be real clear. I'm not saying that. I'm saying we are going to have to make it, and I apologize if that's how it came about. I'm a terrible public speaker. We are going to have to make a business decision because things cannot continue at this golf course status quo. They can't.
To kind of clarify your point, something that you did not say in this presentation that you did in the last one. To draw a comparison to your other property, I think it's Cypress Lakes. You had made a statement that it is 40% lower to operate than this. One of the things I did a little research on was that that golf course has 18 holes. So just simple math.
It doesn't work that way. I actually have that question. I didn't put the name to it. That when we get to Triumph's question answered, I was going to walk through that analogy.
Let's get it.
Let's finish with Alan.
We're in that phase right now that has to do with Harris County Flood Control and their presentation.
Yes, sir.
The question that you asked, the the question that you're asking is coming up in the next phase of what triangle position is. Can we hold those questions to go in?
I think that's fair.
Okay, and I'll answer every question either here tonight, or you can come up and meet me any day.
No, I think he makes a good point. Let's be respectful of Harris County.
Okay, any more questions for Harris County? Yes, ma'am.
So there was a question about if there have been 3 offers, and the answer was no, but I believe I remember there have been 3 appraisals.
We have commissioned appraisals on this property.
Triangle Commission.
Yes, we have had property, we've done appraisal on the property in real estate, and there's been an appraisal done on the property as golf course. That, we had to figure out what we had to do in order to make this deal work.
Has flood control had any appraisals done?
I believe that they have, but there has never been a letter of offer generated from those appraisals.
Alan, can you answer that? Have you produced a appraisal number for this property?
So I apologize that I do not have the appraisal number handy. I can't you caught me on the one question that I can't really answer without going back and getting with our folks at the real property, because there have been at least an appraisal done. One should know that that we do treat our appraisals as they expire, so to speak. You know, after a certain period of time, they become stale. I can't remember how long ago that appraisal was, and I don't have that number, but let me talk with RPD. There, in some cases, we're not able to release numbers to the public. I don't know the answer to that either. You're getting me into an area that is the exact reason why we have a separate group called Real Property Division, because they're the experts on this. So let me consult with them, and I will do my best to get that answer to y'all in a form that I'm able to answer. I don't want you to think that I'm specifically dodging a question just because I honestly don't know the answer to it.
I have the appraisal that we commissioned, we paid a pretty healthy amount of money for with Gary Brown and Associates. We did it in order to try to build something that was factual and not just based on guesses. When the board is elected, I will be more than happy to share that with the board. I will give you my appraisal, but it is also fractionally dated. Next question for Mr. Black. Yes, sir.
More of a statement, and I think we're getting real close to the point where we, as potential board members, we shouldn't be involved. And that price of negotiations and those funds, that might be over the line. Agreed?
I'm not sure what you're saying was. You said something about as potential board members, we should not be involved in what?
That negotiation between those two parties.
Yeah, okay, I hear you. And let me make a follow-up statement to that, okay? It's independent of the board what the agreement between the county and you guys are, okay? The question before us is whether we can or would or desire to modify the deed restriction. Okay, if you guys make $2 trillion off of it, great. I wish I had stock in your company, okay? But that's not my issue.
Okay, I wanted to say this, I'm gonna say it because it's in my next one, it's in my next comments, it's in my next session. I've said it before, I've said it on December the 2nd. I will say it again. Triumph is not putting one penny in our pocket from this transaction, not a dime. And I'll go through why. I've got it broken down in dollars on the slide coming up, not a dime.
Let's go back and let's go home.
Alan, anything else for Alan? Alan, I really appreciate it. You've been wonderful as always. And if any other questions come out, I will see that they're delivered to you.
But thank you. I will, again, you all, I really appreciate your time, your activism in your community. We have continued to receive questions, and we also continue to update the frequently asked questions on our webpage. So if you don't have that link, I think it's been published fairly robustly through Facebook and other places. But go to our website if you don't, because we are updating that frequently asked questions list, trying to capture more of those questions that keep coming in. So keep them coming. Feel free to send us an email, and we'll definitely get back with you as soon as we can. And we really appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you so much, Alan.
Okay, thanks, y'all. Have a good evening.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Great questions. And that's exactly what I was hoping coming out of this meeting, was that y'all drill down and ask the questions that were at the core of the matter, trying to really understand the issue at large. I want to make the statement again. I, Tim, Alan Black, the Real Property Division, we will continue to answer your questions factually and timely. That, and I underline the factually part, that we want to be transparent, and we will share anything that we have with you. Moving into the second part of the meeting, and I will try to go fast, because I didn't mean to take up your entire evening. That's what we're here for. Okay.
Not to take a big hurry.
Well, I'm gonna take a chunk of it.
I mean, I ate peanut butter and Joe sandwich before I came, so.
I should have had chicken wings or something here. Why is it amending the deed restriction important? And I apologize, but this is going to be very elementary, because I really want the people to understand it. You want to go to the next slide? I put this slide in here for a reason. Mr. Olson, did you ask me for a copy of this? Someone asked me for a copy that showed all the land and all of that.
You mean this one right here?
Yeah.
I took a snapshot of your last presentation.
Okay, and I have a copy of it with me. If someone wants it, I'm gonna set my business cards on the thing right by the door. If someone wants a copy of the map, a copy of the floodplain, anything that you want, email me. Or I'll meet you up here and show it to you. I put this up here just to give y'all a visual representation of, if you look at on the kind of the right-hand side, you got the green and the purple. That's tract A and B. The two combined represent the 62 acres that is going to become detention. The blue highlighted area up through the middle, look like a snake, is the 20 acres. And y'all can look at this tomorrow. Just click through it on the PowerPoint if you want to. Is the 20 acres on the creek channel where they're going to widen it up to 600 feet. In color, in yellow, green, and purple are the golf holes that are going to have to be rebuilt. I want to make sure that y'all understand this. This is called C, because there are two other routings that we're looking at. This is not a final routing, but nothing more than an example of the routing. There is a possibility that we may go 10 holes out and 8 holes, 10 holes on one end and 8 holes on the other one, because it is much more economic. That is a possibility. We have not defined the ultimate routing, but we have had construction crews come in, we have had architects come in, and we have done quite a bit of work on this.
Suggestions. If you're going to go 10 out and 8 back, put a restroom out there, please.
Well, here is, this is a wonderful opportunity. And this is an opportunity for Longwood to protect itself against future flooding, to improve the centerpiece of the community. Because right now, if I had to rank my golf courses that we own, I own 7, that this is number 8 in condition. And I'll tell you, and the reason why is because the $4 million that I mentioned earlier that we have spent on trying to keep the doors open have been, but nothing but keeping the doors open, haven't been allocated to improvements. My other courses, Cypress Lakes, Tim runs it, it's got a budget, we'll get to the budget and the numbers and the third and all that. Tim runs it, and it runs infinitely cheaper in this one, and it produces, on a percentage basis, it's my #1 producer in the company, not on a gross basis. But this is a really good opportunity to get flood mitigation and this place fixed up where it is, where the neighborhood can be proud of it, where Triumph can be proud of it, where the clientele and the members can be proud of it. Right now, it's not. We know it's not. When we're not walking around with blinders on. We know there are problems here, but y'all cannot imagine, you're gonna be able to imagine in just a minute, you cannot imagine the amount of money we spend on just keeping the doors open. Next slide. Why is amending the deed restriction important? Pretty obvious. They're gonna take 82 of our acres to restore, and the way that they're taking it, there is not 18 homes left. There is not. In order to restore to 18 homes, we're keeping 2 homes on the 9 homes over there. We're keeping them because we have to have them in order to get back to 18. Then we've got to rebuild 5.
You just confused.
Hmm?
The holes are all on this side, west.
Yeah, everything this side of Longwood Trace we're keeping, which comprises different names. We're rerouting the golf course and rebuilding 5 holes. Rebuilding 5 holes is both hugely problematic, but it also is a luxury for us. That when you rebuild 5 holes, you have to rebuild 5 greens. And you can't go on any golf course in America and rebuild 5 greens and say we're done. Because then you have 2 different types of turf grass. So we have to rebuild all 18 greens. That's a drop in the bucket, by the way. To rebuild the greens, about 700,000. You can check it on here.
Sorry, I'm a numbers guy, I think.
That's okay. I happen to be a numbers guy too. But what we've got to do is we've got cart pass. Cart pass will no longer get you from hole to hole. Even though we're going to rebuild just 5, 9 holes, well, we're taking 3 9s and turning them into 118. All the cart paths have to be demoed and re-put in, so you can flow through them. All the irrigation. When they moved the tree channel up 600 feet, all of our drainage, right now, you can go out to number 4 and look, we have drainage standing up there. It looks like a pinnacle out in the middle of the thing. All of our drainage has to be redone because Longwood was designed to be the collection of the community. We were supposed to take y'all's water and move our water and move it downstream. We have huge corrugated drains running all under the golf course. When you get done with all that, then we've got to start to talk about irrigation, signage, all those other things. It all adds up. It adds up to $6.4 million. Now, can we do it cheaper? Probably you're going to have to. But here is the important thing to understand. We are not going to walk down the flood control and give them a quote, $6.4 million, and then write us a check. We have our experts generate this, turn it over. They retain experts. Now, we're given a choice. They'll give us a list, and they have asked us if we want to put someone on the list for them to evaluate. They will give us a list, but their experts go through it and say a screw doesn't cost $2. And cuts it down, cuts it down, cuts it down. And they come back and say that $6.4 million is really only 4.9. And we've got to figure out what we can do with the 4.9. Now, we got the best and the brightest in the industry that are going to put our numbers together, and hopefully I'll bring experts them in to argue with them. But I'm not going to go down easy. I got one shot at saving this business. So, anyway, this is critical. I've said it once, I'll say it again, I'm going to say it 3 more times. The damage that they do, they can only pay me to repair it to a number equal to or smaller than the remaining value of the asset. Okay? Next slide. You jump one. All right, this is just a simple pie chart. They're going to take 82 acres and leave us with 169 acres to construct a golf course. So a normal golf course takes 150 acres. So it's very, very doable. It is not like we're going to have a miniature golf here. We're going to have a championship level golf course. Going to go jump on to the next one? All right, here it comes, number 2. They cannot pay us more to restore the damages than the value of the remaining asset. What was on the previous pie chart in orange, 169 acres. And again, Triumph estimates the cost at being $6,400,000 to restore the golf course. Next slide. The current, our Gary Brown and Associates, okay? Here's what happened. Now, I really and truly want to make sure that y'all understand that it doesn't matter who appraises this for us. It's going to come down to flood, real property divisions appraiser. Our appraiser is going to argue with them. We have a chance to try to negotiate with them, but it does not matter what our appraiser says. So the stuff that I am giving you is nothing more than an example that we are trying to give you based on Gary Brown and Associates appraisal. All right, if you take the current land, which 69.8% of the remaining 169 acres is either in floodway or floodplain. You apply a value to that. You discount it because of size, and I don't understand this, but because of the size you discount it, and because of other things you discount it, you come up to a number, and then you discount it by 75% because of our deed restriction. Because the only thing it can be used for is green space because of our deed restriction. Golf course is considered deep green space. So you take that number, we come up to $15,000 an acre. Total value of the 169 acres is 2.6 million. Elementary again, obviously that is less than the 6.4 million we need. If we take go to the next one. If we take the exact same methodology, we take the 25% discount for floodplain, we take the 75% discount for floodway, we do what's high and dry at a certain price, $62,000 an acre are the comps. Right now, we spread that out. We do not discount it for green space because it says, what we're proposing says golf course or high-end real estate. That then it is not discounted and we get a valuation of $8 million.
But to interject one point, that's the reason why the recommended draft of the deed change is worded for those two things, because then it's not clearly stated and evaluated by the county as green space. So it's not severely discounted, so you can get a better price, so you can restore the golf course and put that in there. Lower your operating costs, be able to improve it where it is an attractive place for people who want to golf. And not only that, having a golf course that is viable and strong is good for everybody. At least everybody that's left in the room.
I should have called you 2.5 years ago. You said it very distinctly and very, very simply. You are 100% correct.
It's not about that you guys are, and I'm just going to be real blunt.
Yeah.
You're in the business of golf.
Yes, sir.
Okay? Here are economic realities that I know about golf. I'm not a golf guy. I play soccer. So, but it doesn't mean I don't respect other people in the sport, right? In my league, when we run, people are coming back to play soccer and for adult soccer because of what the situation is right now with COVID. People want to get outside, they want to get out their energy, whatever. Okay. Same thing is with golf. Golf is making a bit of a resurgence when it's making a decline. Okay, overall. I mean, I read one article that over the last 10 years, that 80 golf courses are closing. So to make something as attractive as everything that I've read that you want to do and make it a really good 18-hole golf course, I think is in everybody's best interest and is a key motivator for you wanting to do it, because you're not here to do real estate. You're here to run golf courses, profitable golf courses, which means if we gave you the deed to sign that over, you're not going to be in a hurry if you get bored while trying to wait until the money comes in, Harris County finishes their stuff, take the land and be able to sell it to do real estate.
You're 100% correct through your last statement. This is something that's very important to know. As soon as we cut a deal, they survey it, stake it, we get the check, we can start work before they start work. We're moving up and out, and then someone's gonna go, what happens if it floods? I've already spent $4.5 million showing my staying power. I'll continue to stay, because I have a chance. So I plan on breaking ground next March.
Can I ask a question? Maybe I'm jumping ahead, okay?
Okay.
But it's one that I keep hearing, and one that I'm gonna make a suggestion to. I keep hearing from people that are having problems with this whole thing, is that we've never responded to our legal, position, stating what you're willing to do and accept the terms that we're offering for the modification. Now,
So
hang on.
that couldn't be,
Well, hang on, I have an email that came from your office or somebody in your office to one of the people in my subdivision where he asked that question and you guys said, no, we will accept those terms. But every time I bring that up in a conversation, the opposition said, well, the lawyer's never seen it.
well, stop, let me go. July of last year, our real estate attorney, $750 an hour, drafted an amendment, shared it with Trish, the HOA's attorney. It was commented on by a board member. I'm assuming the entire board saw it, but the board member saw it, got it back to Trish, Trish took it back to our lawyer. Once Trish signed off on it, Trish and our lawyer took it to Katie Callahan and Don Strickland, which are county attorneys. They agreed that that amendment would not make a street space. I don't know how to say that any better. They have already agreed. Now, what I have committed, this is very important, I have committed to amend that amendment to include price, square footage, subject to CC and Rs within the development. And what y'all haven't heard yet, which I'm gonna get to, you're gonna see it here in just a minute, I've agreed to extend the deed restriction.
Okay, here's where I'm going. I asked that question because this is being taken. This is going to be out of the way. People are going to be able to look at it. Okay? I want to shut down that argument that you guys have not agreed to any of the amendments. I want it on that video, and that's why I asked the question.
Lori?
Yeah, they asked us, what would you like in this, what would you like? I mean, they didn't say apartments, that was a big lie. They didn't say commercial, they didn't say, multifamily dwellings. From almost day one, we have the control to say what was acceptable to us. We have the opportunity to define this. 4,000 square foot.
You know what happened to that amendment that was delivered to y'all at the board in July?
No, I wouldn't know.
No, neither do I. There's not one thing that's come back on it. We have offered to share financials, we have offered, and then it got to be, now here is an argument, I'm getting out of order here. But here is an argument that was made that I didn't catch until it was made. I thought it was a great argument. What happens if we release the amendment today? And it takes 9 months to cut a deal with flood control. What protects us during that 9 months from you selling it to them as real estate?
I just call bridge insurance.
Well, I took it a step further. I'll give y'all an assignable first right of refusal at the golf course valuation, which is so cheap, it's unbelievable. We are not going to develop this property. It's that simple. I don't have a problem extending the length of the deed past 2042. We are not going to develop this property.
I have a question about what you just said, because I think I heard a real big that the right of refusal is not going to crack up committee, saying that you did the first right of refusal really doesn't mean a lot.
Really?
Legally, you're an attorney, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought.
So right of first refusal is there was another offer to purchase the land, then the HOA would have the right to say, no, we don't want you to sell that land, you have to sell it to us. And the HOA would then be the purchaser. That's the right of first refusal. It's not us saying, we don't accept that, you can't do that. That's not how that works.
So if someone offers me $17 million, I'm basically giving y'all a right of first refusal, an assignable right of first refusal for $5 million.
I think he asked me for.
If that's not negative protection, I don't know how to give it to you.
I thought in our deeds, bylaws, and all that stuff, that it stated that Longwood Association cannot enter into any type of loan. So if we get first right refusal to say, well, you can buy for 17 million, I thought you're not able to buy anything because you can't enter into any loan to purchase $17 million.
don't have, you don't have to. You can go to True and say, I got this golf course here, it's worth $17 million. You'll give me a 10-year management agreement, I'll sell it to you for 5. You'll have a check before the end of the day.
But we still can't enter any kind of agreement like that. Like, that's what I'm saying. I think the vast majority.
Is it an amendment in the bylaws to do that? I mean, is that?
But it also is financial, you don't ever have to take property, you go out and find a buyer.
Y'all just broker.
All
Thank you. Let's get close with that.
All I'm trying to do is give y'all some securitization for what I call the limbo period. That's all I'm trying to do. Because that was a question that when it came up, I thought, you know, they're right. They're gonna release the deed, it's free and clear, it's gonna be, you know, a few months down the road until I strike a deal with flood control, until we pay for it. I can do what I want to with it. So I did that in order to try to give y'all protection. I'll get to my closing in a few moments, but in my closing, one of the things I asked the board to do is to sign a committee, or maybe the whole board wants to do it, to work on the language in the amendment, to work on the escrow agreement. I've also said that 100% of the money that we get for the cure from flood control will be put in an escrow for the sole use of restoring the golf course, 100%. And then I've also said we'll extend the deed.
And you know, that is so important, that we lengthen and strengthen that deed. We don't kick the can forward, we don't wait till 2042, and then all of a sudden they can sell to anybody they want.
What does that mean? We extend.
Right now, you have a negative.
I know I'm aware.
Right now, it's just going to be off 2026. If that reverses that, that's 2042. Okay, so if we come back and say, let's say a golf course or high-end real estate, and I extend it for 15 years, 2057, then y'all can go. Otherwise, 2042, I go to Walmart. I'm not like that. I'm just giving you a very radical. So in conjunction with the amendment, instead of the term start on 2042, I will be agreeable to extend to protect y'all on what could be here for an extended period of time.
It's basically extending, I mean, the equivalent is extending the mortgage. I go and refinance my mortgage, it's supposed to be next year, but that's in 15 years from now because I've extended. That's all we're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah,
I'm all right.
I'm so simple.
All right, we're jumping all around, so I'll probably skip some stuff coming up. You wanna? No, it's all right. Go to the next one. What happens if we're successful? Boom. Oh, you jumped 2 ahead. No, you didn't. You did not. All right, this is something that I want to make sure that everybody understands. I told y'all will be 100% transparent. I will continue to be so. You own a farm. If someone comes in and wants to buy half, you borrow the money, we'll give your analogy, and you want someone to buy half your farm, what happens to the money you get? Goes to pay your loan. You don't get to touch it. It's handled at closing. We have the exact same situation. We're giving up 32.7% of our property. And in order for us to be able to service our financial obligations on giving up basically a third of our business, we have got to pay off the debt by $3 million.
That's just on the 82 acres.
Yeah, that's just on the 82
Doesn't have
acres.
anything to do with it.
It has nothing to do with the 82 acres. Anything that we get greater than that, we're going to use to continue improvements on the golf course, continue improvements on the clubhouse, and we will be more than happy to have the discussion about us being a benefactor to the amenities to the detention park. But it is all subject to what the ultimate appraisal is on the 82 acres. And I'll just tell you, that Gary Brown and Associates believes that we'll get $4.2 million. That means we'll have $1.1 million to do stuff. And we will commit that we will sit down with you all. If we get that, our priority is we can't do the deal. We literally can't do the deal if we don't get 3.1 of the 8. Our financing will not allow us to do this.
Right, but you have like, what about damages? Don't they pay for damages on top of whatever they pay for that?
For that 82 acres, the damages on that is about 70 grand. This golf course was originally 18 holes. Are you aware of that? Yeah. And they added the additional 9 holes. The irrigation, it's the simplest thing in the world to lose those holes over there because they were not here with the golf course. It's about $70,000. And you know, the bulk of it, region scorecard, that happens at the second 27. Yeah, I wish it was more, but unfortunately, they have people that tell me it's not. So that's a two-edged sword. But you have a commitment from us, and again, we want to work in a partnership with the HOA. We don't want to do this and drag y'all along. We don't want y'all to do something to drag us along. Together, we're stronger than we are separate. We can get this number. I'll tell you what the number is. Y'all know what my dad on it is. Anything that's left, I will work with you on how we share it. I don't know what else I can do. I've offered right of first refusal. I've offered escrow money. I've offered extend the deed. I've offered to share part of the proceeds above the $3.1 million. This is a unique situation. You know what the problem is? I'll tell you what the problem is. It's ingrained in us that in order for someone to win, someone has to lose.
Right.
That is what's ingrained in everyone in this room. This is one of the very rare situations where we all can win. The HOA can win, the golf course can win, the flood control.
What about the residents? I'm just thinking based on what you question on the people. What about the residents who are saying, because of this transaction, if that lien is taken, we can lose up to $100,000 in our property? I don't think they feel like they're.
Go ahead.
They're just saying.
Go ahead.
I looked at the, you lose 4 value in your house because of flooding, and 2 because it's not.
Hey, I understand that. I'm just saying, you have residents asking this question. Then you have to address it. And we have residents.
And I've addressed that.
Don't feel like they're one of the 3.
I've addressed that in my Q&A, but I'll do it right now. Flood control is going to take that property no matter what happens. This golf course is not the one that should be paying the residents. It's a question for flood control.
And they do take it, you're back to it.
If they do take it, I lose about $4 million on riding on.
And then why not say if you take it, you gotta make some business.
Yes, ma'am.
But they're writing off or you make a business.
Yes. And right now, the risk that we experience on this golf course from flooding, we can't get this golf course to the level that we need to get it because every time we start to make improvements, you remember, you play here all the time. Every time we start to make improvements, we get slapped 5 steps back, not 1 step or 2 steps.
Let me give one example. I'm not going to apply that. I don't know if it's happening. I volunteer. The sandbags were not rebuilt for something like 6 months. And the reason they weren't rebuilt is because there was a $250,000 insurance payment needed to rebuild the sand.
It took me 3 years to get it.
So when you stop and think about the damage of the waters and how much flood affects, just washing up the sand grant cost.
Well, actually, it cost me $320,000.
That was up to the tax day club.
I've had propeller damage on my roofs. Propeller damage. That, but I lost my train of thought. Going back to the people that saying, have you seen the detention basin park at Cluey?
Yeah.
It's much prettier than our golf course. I wished it wasn't. I wished I could tell you our golf course was much prettier than it is, but it's much prettier. That, go back to my farm analogy, that you buy a farm, you get a loan on it, someone wants to buy half of it, and that Banks wants to keep the money, pay down their loan. Now, let's go ahead and throw something else on top of it. The farm next door, the orchard. He says, you can't sell your farm because your bees pollinate my trees. You have to pay me to sell your farm. Is that right? I do not believe, there's all kinds of studies on the real estate and the value and the premium on the lots. But I believe that done correctly, the detention basin park could be a positive to the community, not the 37 homes that look at this. It could be a beautiful thing.
Especially if it's just not such straight up hole where it's collecting. You would be willing, and this is not the first time I've heard it, your company would be willing to put money in to do that. And then, I'm not sure if this board has ever gone to, in precinct 4.
Most precincts.
Of the most precincts. If they ask them to contribute, and then you build a plan. Anyone who says, it's like, well, we have no idea what's in it. You have to allow time to talk to people, to exchange, adding everything legally to amend the deed. You have to talk to everybody and say, okay, if we do this, would you be willing to contribute? So you have anxiety over something that you're not allowing the time to go and investigate and build a picture and then say, yes, this is worth doing.
Man, you need to come up here.
Because
Because
it's
what you said is exactly
simple. To me, it's common sense. And not only that, it's good business sense that, to me, I will be honest, I honestly don't care about golf, but I love people that play golf. I have plenty of friends that do, and you know what? I want to see everybody succeed, and being able to help somebody else that their business succeeds, and it brings a lot of people happiness. The guy I bought his house for, I mean, you know, it brings him so much joy and depression. You know, I don't want to take that away from him because he loves golfing here. You know, but that's sport, right? You don't want to take away from somebody without or even wanting to cooperate until you actually walk the walk and talk what you're saying and find out what you're actually committing to and what other people can do. You know, to me, I don't want any of my neighbors to lose value, but also I don't want my neighbors to lose their homes. Again, I mean, you're talking 300 residents versus, what is it? How many golf course lots are there?
I believe it's 37.
It's just that one area.
Just in the one area?
This is not one area, it's 37.
Those people, anybody's welcome to disagree with me. Those folks will lose more money on their homes if we don't do anything about that versus the people that are going to lose value on their golf course lots. Because now, if we do it, they have a better golf course. There is more cooperative people that we get if we build the right relationship, get people to contribute so it doesn't look like an eyesore and practical, whatever. I'm sorry. Stop you. Going beyond what the gotta be careful. We still have to face the very reliable source of information. I mean, this is a whisper in the ear, whisper in the ear, whisper in the ear. I know, but we said it would be presentation on it. And it needs to be okay. I get your point. Let's get the back of there, let's community
David, go to the next slide. All right. As I've already said, I'm going to say it again because it's on my slide, that we have offered to escrow all the damages, all the cure costs that we get with the HOA. We're willing to enter into an assignable right of first refusal. Finally, we're willing to extend the amendment to the deed restriction. We're willing to extend the term that we want to be a golf course. And we want it to be a centerpiece of the community, something that we can be proud of. And again, I said it a few minutes ago, I really don't know what more that we can do to show y'all that we're trying to be transparent. Just-
Do you put it in writing?
Yeah.
Offer with what you're willing to do.
Absolutely. And that,
It's how it's in slack, the draft is in slack.
and here, when it gets down to it, what I'm asking you all to do is vote to move the amendment forward. And that's not just y'all vote to sign the amendment. I'm asking y'all to either as a board or as a committee of the board, work on the language of the committee, of the agreement. Work on the language of the escrow, work on the language of the right.
Sir, the November 23rd, our attorney, HOA attorney, sent an email to your attorney with questions, these exact questions you're addressing tonight, what exactly do you want us to do? And there's been no response.
I have not heard, and I talked to her, and I honestly have not heard what you want us to do. The email that I got forwarded to me from Trish said, you have not answered that question, Q&A that I sent you. That was the last email that I saw.
Your attorney still be vocal?
Yes.
Okay, I mean,
I'll follow up with her.
That was the thing that I asked her, that I wanted it out of these meetings. They're going to put in writing. Because I'm hearing that from our attorneys, that said they never heard back from the group of attorneys that said that you were willing to do it. That's why I wanted it.
I am willing 105% on putting it right, that I'm willing to do these things, just like y'all would say, subject to us agreeing on the language and all.
One other thing is you can make a point. We're here because we're candidates for a board election. The board election is open on the 20th. Yes, it's going to close. It's the day it close. February 17th. None of us here can act what you want us to do until after that board election.
I understand.
So realize that regardless of whether we're pro or con on this issue, there's no action that we can take until after the election.
I am 100% aware of that. And what I will ask you to do is when there's ultimately just 5 of you, is to start working on this with us. And our lawyers are correct, our lawyers can review, your lawyers can draft, our lawyers. I'll have you take the burden to save y'all some money and y'all can review, but y'all are welcome to draft. But we need to put together 3 documents. We need to put together the amendment for the deed restriction with language that supports the change that protects y'all from golf course and high-end real estate. Y'all want to put a minimum price square footage subject to CCNR, that's fine. And then extend the term. That's 100% fine. Simultaneously, we need to work on escrow agreement, and then we need to work on the sign of our first refusal. Once those things, everybody says, this is what we're talking about, then we can sign you and report it. Until then, I would expect.
I would suspect. I would suspect that we're doing. Okay, you're not right, but I would suspect the first document. I think the first document that we could create was called Memo of Understanding that lists the points that we would like to see. Because that's how you craft laws. You put together what it looks like, and then you have the legal people put all on it. Right.
So that would be after our meeting, you have a chance to hear facts. You already run through facts.
Y'all, I want you to share it with the community, but y'all need to talk to your HOA attorney. Y'all, the board has the capacity to do this by majority vote.
They do, that's the problem the whole time. That's why our community is in such an uphill that there are 1,500 plus houses in Longwood. There are going to be a potential for 500. You cannot speak for 1,500 people with 5 people in a room. You're right. They do need to hear facts, they need to read facts, they need to see facts. And we need to know what they think about this bill as homeowners in Longwood. It's not just 5 people who sit around and go,
Wait. There are 380 million people in the United States. There's 600 members of Congress. You're saying 600 members of Congress.
we're not talking about the United States. We're talking about neighborhoods.
It's the same thing. You're elected forward based on our position.
You should have, but even this, as a neighbor, This affects people. That's the biggest bill.
Let's go on.
Ma'am, I'm not trying to cut you off more you. All right, but this can be, y'all can have this meeting on your first night. It's the five of you, of the direction that you want to take, whether you want to send out a survey, whether you want to do this. But there has to be a consensus that, do we want to pursue this? If we want to pursue it, how do we want to pursue it? Whether it's a survey, town halls, however you want to do it. We will support anything that you want to do, but we're going to have to act in expedient manner. We are going to do that, or we're going to lose the opportunity.
And then I'm sure your attorney has something he's supposed to be responding.
Yeah, I'm going to call Reed in the morning.
Check our, that help expedite the process if there is a documentation not being addressed, and whether it's in your hand or whether it's.
Jim, he's going to get called. I just handed him a bill before y'all got here. It's a big.
Needs to respond on a document. Whomever is being responsible to review that information in the board afterwards. I'll start the process.
I will, it won't necessarily be a memorandum of understanding, but I will put together a statement position and send it over, and I'll sign it, because that is what we need to be drafted into a different agreement. Get right to the issue there.
Okay, so March is when you want everything that every head starts selling the property, that under you want only one month for the division.
I've got a time frame in my policy that I can skip here and go through. Finish that. Okay. Yes.
I obviously know, but I think the one thing I know what you said, the one thing I'm hearing is, what happens if flood control district comes in, examines the land, whatever, take the land, it's fine,
Gonna have to look at this.
what the step is,
It's going to be either sell it off or because I'm not, I wish I could.
And what happens if it goes down, walk away? What happens to this man, don't look like, what's it gonna do?
Well, first,
What, the people, everybody understands.
We are in Forest, Well Valley.
first of all, Harris County Flood Control District will not just go eminent domain.
I'm just wrong
Let me finish. They will not eminent domain just the 82 acres. They will eminent domain all 251 acres.
Yeah.
Because 82 acres is a huge headache. So they would take this whole piece of property if they wanted to declare eminent domain on this property. So at that point in time, it wouldn't make any difference what we decide to do or not. They're gonna own this property.
That needs to be laid out.
Yes.
And they've never said that. They have never said that in those words. Here's what they've said. If the majority of the residents are in favor of flood mitigation, we will move forward. I don't know of anybody here that doesn't want to reduce their flood by 6.7 inches, 10 feet or anything. I think you will have a report. And they have been unbelievable in trying to not send a letter of offer, not doing anything while we try to resolve it. Because it has been made very, very clear by multiple board members and multiple residents, they want to preserve the golf course. And I've made it real clear, I want to preserve the golf course too. Again, go to the next slide. You asked us what would happen, the consequences if it didn't happen. If flood control appraisals the property as it exists today, it jeopardizes the flood mitigation program because I'm not going to accept $956,000. I'm just not going to do it. That I would go into negotiations with them at that time for all 251 acres and write off my loss. But I don't. No one in this room wants that to happen, especially me. If If they decide to continue with the property at a lower price value, you know, the golf course would go away, period, because there's not enough money to restore it. It's not, if you're only gonna have 12 holes out there when they get done with this, there's not enough money to restore it. And finally, here's the one that ought to concern everyone the most, is they just get tired of the crap and go to another project. Well, I have been told by them that they gave me a fixed amount of days and told me that it extended would continue to make progress. They deemed this meeting progress. They deemed it very big progress. And all the people that have contacted their office, they deem it progress. That, so, you know, everyone who's sent questions to me, and I forward them to Alan, and I forward them to the real property division, and we answer them internally. That is progress, but at some point in time, we're gonna have to make a decision, either do it or not do it, or this opportunity is gonna be gone. Or it's either gonna be gone, or they're gonna take the property and you're not gonna have to say something. Next slide. All right, question and answer. I've already answered a bunch of them. I've received a bunch of questions. I was gonna answer them, I'll answer them briefly, and then we can have a Q&A and you can beat me up for all that you want to. Going. Okay, bunch of questions. Most of the questions that we received have already been answered. They've either been answered tonight or they've been answered in previous stuff that posted on our website. And if y'all have a better way to share it, we'd be happy to share it. You can pull it off of our website and share it with anybody. We are not trying to have a super secret handshake club. We're not trying to do any of that. We have an opportunity that could benefit us all. We're either going to pursue it or we're not. But I don't need any miscommunication, falsehoods, lies posted, you know, credibility questions and all that. If you don't want to do it, don't. But if you want the information, we provide it. If we haven't provided it, ask for it. We will get it to you. So anyway, and a lot of the questions were answered in the Q&A that the HOA attorney has sent us. It is also posted on our website. And I've already told y'all before I get into the questions is, again, almost every question says, why do you want us to lift the deed? I am not asking you to lift the deed. I'm asking you to amend the deed. The deed, matter of fact, you don't have the capacity. You don't have the authority as a board to lift the deed. You do have authority to amend the deed. All right, first question. How much money will you gain if the HOA lifts the deed? What will the potential amount be used for? I think I've already answered that, but I'm going to say it again. Trent is not profiting one penny, not a penny. We're not putting one dime in our pocket. The money that we get for the 82 acres is going back into this golf course or back into the amenities of the detention park. After our debt, we have reaped the realities of debt. So we are not going to fold one penny up. We believe that this upgraded golf course, this is one of the best layouts in town. It is without a doubt one of the single best layouts in town. When it opened in the original 1800s, it was considered one of the premier places to play in Houston. That's what we want to get it back to. And quite greedily, capitalistic, capital P, yeah, we're going to charge. We're going to hit it up to $100 weekend green fees and $75 weekday green fees and free membership. And we are going to offer discounts to the Longwood residents. So, yeah, I'm a capitalist. I invest millions and millions and millions of dollars. I'm just trying to get a chance to get out of the program. Here's an important fact. I'm not going to read everything that's on here because I believe that a bunch of it's already been answered to questions. No one, no golf company, Triumph included, will continue to invest in this property as it exists today. It's just throwing good money after that. Will there be any compensation to the residents who are directly affected? I know that's a critical point, and it keeps getting brought up, but this is the question for flood control. Because the golf course, that land is going to become, in all probability, that land is going to become flood mitigation, regardless of the amendment to the deed restriction. The amendment to the deed restriction says whether you're going to preserve the golf course, not whether you want to do the flood mitigation. They're two distinct topics. I won't go those. You know, and I got to tell you, and I don't believe there's anyone in this room that would say, no, that ain't right. Reducing flood levels by 10 feet. I don't know anyone who's going to vote against it, say I'm not in favor of protecting this development. I don't know. That gives, if flood control chose, that gives them the political support to condemn or to take it. I mean, just a statement. Why are you rushing for the deed to be lifted? Rushing. We've been at this for 3.5 years. And apart from the email that you mentioned on the 23rd, November the 23rd, I have not gotten any communication or response from the board since July. But Trish is asking when I'm going to answer the Q&As, and they're routed to me. But I have not been asked, what do you want? What do we need? When do we need to do it? I haven't been asked those questions. And I will follow up on that on the 23rd. The only thing that we received is social media. And I won't even go in, I think everybody's read it. That I won't even put on here what I wrote. That flood control, if we keep arguing amongst ourselves, if we can't find common ground for us to march together, flood control is either going to take the property or go away. There is no in between. Both of them, we all lose. This one's long because this one caught me sensitive. Since you own the property, you've not done any projects or investment in the clubhouse, golf course, hardship. Why haven't you worked on updating these projects? This is what we've done since 2016. 100,000 on the roof, 180,000 on AC, 30,000 on plumbing, $17,000 on carpet that got washed out. Landscaping, 50,000, they got washed out too. The entire front of the clubhouse. Bunker renovation, 320. Parks, 780,000. Paint the clubhouse and pavilion twice, 85,000 each time. Fire suppression system, new flooring and drywall after the flood in here. Green drains, ceiling repairs. Y'all used to see all the holes in the ceiling. And golf course maintenance equipment, 210,000. Those things that we haven't invested in the last 3 years total $1,861,000. While that was going on, we spent $2,750,000 on flood repair damages. We have spent in the last, I say 3 years, just short of 4 years, we have spent $4,611,000. There is a reality to capital. And I know everyone in here knows it. I have invested my money to keep the doors open. I have not, if I have to spend, we have quotes to fix the cart barn. If I have to spend $37,000 to fix the cart barn, or $37,000 to do something on the golf course, the cart barn's not going to get fixed. And that's where we're at. We got empty walls here. You know, we lost paintings and floods and all this stuff. We haven't replaced it. Because the money that we would have to use on that is better used to keep the golf course playable in better condition. We recognize better than anybody in this neighborhood what we need to do to that golf course, and it's a lot. So when they say, why haven't we invested in anything? I just want to tell you, we have invested in a lot. And while this is going on, we spend over $1 million a year in golf course maintenance. Now we get the years. You're 1/3. It doesn't divide by 1/3. The equipment, all that manpower, that we got 12 on staff here, 11 on staff there. The equipment over there, our grand leases are almost done. All that, it doesn't, the only thing that changes is the water that we buy, it goes up about 20%. That we have invested in this club because we want to have a future here. We keep thinking there's a light at the end of the tunnel. Right now, we're kind of going down, we're just hoping it's not a train. Why are you trying to force the HOA to take this risk in lifting the deed? Do you understand the potential risk and expense to a nonprofit organization? No, I'm sorry. I don't understand the question. We're not trying to force you. We're not trying to force the board to do anything. We're trying to give you all facts so you're not going to make an informed decision. I am fully aware that a decision can be no. I'm not naive that thinks that it has to be yes, or I'm going to cry. It's no. If y'all decide that it's not in the best interest of the community, I'll buy you a beer and we'll talk about it, and that's it. I'll have to make a business decision on my side. But I don't understand the risk I've exposed you to, especially when I'm willing to securitize the future of this through all the things that I've told you. And if I have misunderstood the question and have done a terrible job answering the question, ask me after I respond to these, or email me, or call me, or ask me to meet up there for coffee, and I will try to do my best to understand the question. Go on to slide 29. This is really long question, so I'm going to kind of consolidate it. That there's been a question about will there be consideration to homeowners that live on the golf course through landscaping, easements, buffers, potentially quick deeding land to them and all that. I have no intention of leaving anybody out there high and dry. We've already been talking, and I believe you have a board member that can, a former board member that can attest to it. We've already been talking about buffer zones, landscaping, berms to try to protect the adjacent homeowners if they choose to be protected. We're not going to come in and purposely try to take anything away from anybody that currently has something. And part of it is we're looking at putting an easement behind everything to keep anything from happening in the future, like trucks access, that type of stuff. But this is something that, again, that we want to walk into arm in arm to negotiate is what is best for all parties. But I don't want, yes, ma'am.
Are you talking about consideration to the 37 or to all golf courses?
All the people on the property that's becoming detention, there's no people that live on the property. That's another one that gets me. No one worries about the creek channel that destroys my property. But everyone's worried about the detention that affects the views of their property. That seems like a little bit of a problem. But going back to the views, we have already, matter of fact, at one point early on, the HOA was hiring of their own landscape architect to do their own plans, because we want to create something that is acceptable to those people. And we're also willing to structure easements behind their house so that they can have access to it, one use, to keep other people from utilizing, keep the trucks and everything that come in to utilize it. But I have no intention, it has never been our plan to do this in a vacuum. We want to do it with the board and with community support to move forward in a positive manner that gets everybody as close to what they want as possible. Not everybody's going to get what they want. I want $8 million for the 82 acres. I'm not going to do that. Terrible question, terrible answer to a question, I'm sure. That if the detention is sold, who's going to maintain it while the 3 to 5 years? That's pretty much the question. We've offered that. We have the manpower, we have the equipment, we have offered them to come into some type of maintenance agreement. That's been brought up to the committee that was put on this board early on. We have offered it since day one. The second part of the question is, are you gonna continue to operate it as a golf course? No, it's only gonna be 7 hosts. 2 hosts are being brought into the new 18. So it won't be a golf course, but we have no problem exploring the maintenance agreement. Yeah,
You said that a couple twice. Could you explain that? You're just gonna pay either 9 holes.
There's not 9 holes on either side of the road.
So.
There's only 7 holes on either side of the road. But when they expand the creek channel, there's gonna be 2 holes that will completely disappear.
Okay.
and instead of, in order to try to get our numbers down as reasonable as possible, we're taking 2 hosts. Oh, and none of them are on the same numbers. We're taking 2 hosts that originally we were gonna sell fluffy trucks. And we pulled them back because we have to have them in order to fulfill 18 hosts. The map, I've been asked for the map showing where everything is. That map, that I've got big, I've got huge, I've got 900 different maps like that. I use this one as an example. If this isn't adequate to pull off of the, one of the presentations, email me and I'll send you 5 or 6 maps. If you want them bigger, I'll roll them up, put them on rubber bands and leave them here and you can pick them up. But I have a bunch, yes.
I'm assuming you had course architects look at it for your needs.
Yes. Okay. I had Nicholas out here. February the 5th. Last year.
I would like to mention, that's
Why I didn't advertise it.
what I'd like to suggest that maybe we could mitigate some of the problems by giving us some idea or a picture or a map for those who may be.
See, here's one of the issues with redoing the golf course. And the biggest issue is that bridge.
Yeah.
That bridge is gonna have to go from 300 feet right now as it exists to 600 feet.
Yeah.
Don't know who's gonna pay for that. If we have to pay for that, we're not gonna have a bridge. But depending on how we get across that creek, whether it's down Longwood Trace or over that bridge, the routing of the golf course changed.
Okay.
So I can't sit here, no one can sit here and tell you, hey, this is exactly the way it's gonna look. Because it depends on the routing and how we get back and forth to the clubhouse.
The reason I'm coming that up, there's obviously a strong pushback from those people on the other side of Longwood Trace that are going to lose their golf course view out of property. Okay. But there are people on this side that probably will not, depending on what the new 18 are doing. I was thinking you might be able to mitigate.
Anyone who has a view now on this side, still gonna have a view.
Okay, so I'm trying to-
The other side, they're gonna have a view, yeah. If there was this much effort putting in, as he said, into exploring the amenities going on at the detention basin park, we potentially could have something really special.
No, I agree.
But again, the maps, I'm gonna set a stack of my business cards and y'all can grab one when you leave or not. And if there's something that you want, I'll be happy to share it with you. Absolutely. Again, we're trying to be as transparent as possible and provide you with facts. Y'all make your own minds up.
I'm sorry, and there was a discussion of during some of the transition, helping to keep it low. Okay.
Yeah, I said we'd be more than happy to explore and consider it.
But see, there's 2 nuggets to that. So Harris County Liquor Control said that they would give us money to help maintain it however we want. So between that.
That's not what they said. They said they would mow it 3 times a year.
They
They would only mow it 3 times a year, no more, no less.
No, but they said that they would give us the money.
Yeah.
So that being said, I mean, if you're willing to help maintain it, Harris County gives us the money to maintain it. So that way it's not a bunch of overgrown grass. There's almost to be a combined farms on managing that. And, you guys, find a solution now, sorry. But I mean, that means that increases your offer, the Harris County's offer, makes maintaining that more feasible
Because now that's having to, have a large expense and have it done consistently more to our expectations.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think that as a group, with the new board that comes on, and with Charlotte, that, one of the things we're gonna do, in conjunction with trying to consultants, we need to certainly work with them. Yeah. All right, can Tryon and Harris County Flood Control estimate a timeline for the next steps if we were on board to modify the deed restriction? I forgot that. I want to work jointly to complete the amendment language, the language for the amendment. I want a committee of the entire board to work with us to do the escrow agreement, complete a right of first refusal as soon as possible. And then the appraisal, once we get everything considered, once we get all the documents, the extension, the amendment, which includes the extension, once we get the escrow, once we get the right of first refusal, for y'all lawyer, our lawyer, everyone, and they have to be approved by the county attorney to make sure they accommodate the valuation. I don't believe the board created the problem. That, when Katie and Don have done approval from the county, then they're reported. And then once they're reported, flood control is already committed no more than 90 days to do their appraisal, and they have access to simultaneously start to do the estimate for the damage. The head of real property has been very, very cooperative in trying to structure something where at the end of the day, we don't get into a fight over, I say it's 6.4 and they say it's 2.4. So it's either going to be something, I'm also going to do that for attempt to do that. Has not been approved yet, but I'm going to try to attempt to do it simultaneously where they have someone from their office out here with our experts that are doing all this, that our experts will explain it to them as we go. So at the end of the day, that there's not a huge discrepancy on what we estimate and what they approve. We hope to be under contract with North Harris County Flood Control by October. We want to finalize the golf course plans, completely finalize them by 12/31. We want to begin construction in spring of 2022. And the reason I would say April or March, there is a ground temperature factor that we have to take into consideration on construction.
Is that why you say you can accelerate it? Because we need that spring?
Yeah, you have to have weather that you can grow. So if y'all had a board that said you approved it tonight and they did the appraisal and we were finished and all that, I could, but let's say it was October and everything was approved, I couldn't start my work then because I couldn't grow grass. And then you risk all the risk of erosion and all the money that you spent on moving dirt, washing away. So I have to be able to stabilize it with grass, and I can't stabilize it with grass until spring. So those are my timelines. We'll try and be willing to extend the deed. That's 2042. Absolutely. We agree on the language. Absolutely. No question about it. And I will, when I call Reed, I will tell Reed to put together a sheet and I'll send it over to Trish. Whoever she gives it to, I can't tell what she's going to give it. But it will be done. It will be done within the week. That, guys, we're getting near the end here. Question, have a group of East Side golf course owners collectively or openly approaching the Harris County Flood Control trying and identify themselves, discuss diminished values and concerns. I can't speak for flood control, but with Tryon, not to my knowledge, that everything today's been through social media and verbally once with one of the residents over there, but there has not been any organized effort to come sit down with us. And again, I truly believe this is not a golf course issue. I believe it's a Harris County flood control issue. That the golf course is a flood mitigation project that's going to go through whether or not the amendment to the deed goes through. That's it. So this goes into questions.
personally do not have any different questions.
But I congratulated you on the front end. I want to apologize to you if I've seen, too black and white, too aggressive, because that's never been my intent. I'm trying to get, all I want to do is give y'all facts. Y'all have a responsibility, it's a big responsibility, to make an informed decision. But you can't make an informed decision without the facts. So I'm also going to restate my offer. If y'all want anything, need anything, whether you want me to email it to you, meet you up here, show it to you, explain it to you, I'll be happy to do it. And I know flood control will be equally as cooperative. The golf course has really and truly been the toilet bowl of the development. Everything that happens in the development flushes into here, and we have to drain it away. It was designed to be that way. It truly was. But what's happened is development around us has grown so high that we no longer can handle the capacity that comes in. And it's not the golf course's fault. It's not anyone's fault, but what has happened is overrunning our ability to move the water out because there's nowhere for it to go. And it's starting to undulate the development. The houses, 106 houses flooded. The street flooded. That it's, whether you decide to do the deed amendment or not, flood mitigation is important. That's important to this development. I personally have a stake in, have a business in this development right now. But if y'all choose not to do the amendment, that's a decision, that's a business decision, the risk analysis y'all are gonna have to take. But the flood mitigation, I just don't see how y'all have a once in a 100-year opportunity. Now you had a $2.5 billion bond pass, you have a group that's eager to do it. Y'all, as a neighborhood, flood mitigation. And I hope that preserving the golf course is important because y'all keep talking about, not y'all, it has been spoken that the loss of the golf course diminishes the value of the houses that are on the side of it. Let me tell you what diminishes value. Golf course closing. Values can go down by up to 50%. You don't think so? Go ask Inwood Forest, go ask 12 Valley, go ask the Falls. 50%. It's not a threat. I don't want to close. I swear I do not want to close. But there's realities of what has to happen. And I'm gonna have to make a business decision. We have an opportunity to turn a problem into something that could add value to the homes. To all the homes. Either through the detention basin park, the lack of flooding, the higher quality golf course. It has potential to add value to everyone here. Whether you play golf, you don't play golf. Whether you live on the golf course or you don't live on the golf course. It's an opportunity. Flood mitigation is an opportunity. Restoring this golf course is an opportunity. So I'll jump around because we've already answered it. As soon as there's a board elected, here's what I'm asking. I'm asking y'all to immediately, as soon as practical, assign committees to address the language in the amendment, the escrow agreement, the right of first refusal. Once that those are done, we'll begin the negotiation with the Harris County Flood Control. And I hope the negotiation with Harris County Flood Control is a joint negotiation. I don't think it serves either one of us to be trying to, y'all tell them one thing and us tell them another thing. We need to go in there and tell them the same thing. In order for you to buy this property, this is our expectations of the detention. We're more powerful together than we are apart. Anyway, I'll offer, it's not in here, it was a great suggestion. I'll put together an outline of the things that we're committed to do. And when we get to the point that we have 5 board members and they choose to move forward, that we're more than happy. I have lawyers on staff that they can do a bulk of the work and y'all can review. I also would respect y'all's decision should y'all choose to do the drafting. Either way, all I'm trying to do is tell you that I'm not trying to pop and do expensive. Again, we're available anytime. Again, I'll put my business cards up here. Tim's here all the time. Alan Black, I don't have his business card, but if you email me, I'll send you his telephone number and his email address. We want you to have the facts, because I think the facts speak for themselves. The biggest problem is the misrepresentation of the facts, the opinion of the facts, the personal interest. That the decision needs to be made for the betterment of the entire community. And then the second part of that is the best interest of the community to have a golf course. I thank you very much for coming, and I wish all of you the greatest success in your upcoming election. I think it's just a wonderful thing that you are this devoted to. Well,